I'm on a hiking trail along, it goes into this laurel patch off of a pretty good logging road that I rode my bike in. Here I am on X, my dot. I have an A for access. I mapped this entry right here with using the tracker function of it, and then here's the tree I picked out for a climber or hang on. It's pretty straight, but it does have some limbs, some surrounding trees, a good cover. Anyway, there's a camera about halfway back here. I'm going to go check that camera. Alright, I'm walking my entry in. I kind of utilize this game trail here a little bit for about 20 yards from the hiking trail. I didn't really put any tacks or anything on it because I didn't want to draw attention. I mean, I'm probably a mile and a half, 2 miles from the truck, but still don't like advertising spots. So this is a little tricky getting in here quietly, but I'm giving up a little bit of that for keeping the spot to myself. So we're almost there. And you see as the laurel broke, what we got going on right here. Breaking the laurel, I got a trail. Now I'm cutting across this trail here, but we're almost to the tree. Alright, there's my camera. It's about 7 feet up this tree to keep people's hands off of it. We'll see if we can get pictures. The tree I picked to hunt out of actually is right there. I thought the camera was a little further away, I couldn't remember, but it's a maple tree with a couple other maple trees and an oak right there by it. Some good cover, and it covers this pretty open hardwoods here. It's right off some of these breaks in the laurel here. There's 2 or 3. It almost looks like a wagon wheel, the way the breaks come in, the trails will kind of dump into here. It's a pretty good setup. Okay, so I'm checking I'm not going to check all the pictures right now because I have over 19,000 of them in 2 months, which is crazy. That's one of the better deer I got on camera right there, which he's not that great, but I'll look through the rest of the pictures later. I don't like sticking around here too long, but I do like just checking real quick to make sure the camera is taking pictures well, and you know, it's looking in the right direction. It's not getting messed with by like limbs or any false triggers. Just real quick before I get out of here, just looking at the spot. Got all this nice transition area here along this laurel edge. Out there is the other laurel edge. It's probably 35, 40 yards to that edge. And then here's a real good transition line here. Right along this line here. All the trails here, pretty much like this trail, you can kind of see going through there. Maybe, I can't see if you can see it, but right through there. And then the trails on that laurel edge there, they're all kind of coming from the northwest into this area. And then they kind of fan out just east of me here. So I'd like to be hunting this on maybe a north wind or a south wind. I just don't want it blowing up the transition line or down it. Should be decent. I'm kind of in this blueberry thicket, and I found there's really good trails here. Here's one. There's actually an intersection here. You see the trail going through there. There's one that kind of parallels it right here a little bit. Goes in. And what I'm doing is, there's a dead mountain laurel bush right here. I use one of those screw-in brackets in this dead bush right here. It's not this. This is alive behind it. It's just this dead piece here. See, it's all dead. Put it in there, and then I locked it. It's kind of superficial, I believe, because someone could probably just cut this off. But anyway, got a camera here. Just a little bit. There you go. Nice thing about this is I was able to put it right in there into the dead trunk of that laurel bush, and I have it now watching these trails. Something else I want to talk about just real quick is that I started out hunting like farm country, and a lot of people, especially Midwest, that's what they focus on, farm country, maybe some like hill country type habitat. In farm country, I'm sure you guys know that areas that deer call home and areas that deer travel through and just hang out is way more limited. especially when crops come down. In situations like that, you have to really be careful how much you pressure a stand, or pressure an area, or how many times you hunt a stand, because you run the risk of bumping deer that use that area daily, or regularly anyway. In the big woods like this, it's a little different. Deer densities are lower. Age structure is pretty good. Definitely some mature buck, more than I see like in farm areas I live. But area of unbroken habitat, the big woods, there's just so much area for the deer to go. So with the age structure and the lower deer densities and the unbroken habitat, coupled with, you know, not defined food sources, you know, sporadic oak trees that they kind of favor, maybe some swamp bottoms they go to browse, and then bedding. It's still, I still feel like really good bedding. The best bedding is probably in high demand. But what I'm getting at here is that the buck especially, but deer in general in these big woods habitats, have to travel more. I feel like doe kind of stick to kind of more core areas they kind of call home, but the buck travel to these different doe groups, especially in the rut. And the odds of a buck passing the same tree 2 days in a row are probably pretty rare. What that kind of means is that you don't have to really worry so much, especially if you have good conditions to hunt a certain stand. You don't have to worry so much about hunting that stand consecutively. In my mind, it's actually probably better to hunt it consecutively if the conditions are right, you know, 2, 3, even 4 days in a row, because you're upping your chance of catching that 1 or 2 target buck in that area using that area that you're hunting. You could burn it out and you could spook a buck, but the odds of another buck that's maybe not in an area at that immediate time coming through the next day or 2 or 3 days later may be pretty good. This idea for me is reinforced by I run cameras in these areas, and I rarely get a good buck regularly on a camera, and I definitely don't ever see a good buck going past the same camera in the same area in consecutive days. On one occasion, I have a good buck 2 years ago on camera that had double fork G2s in this area. I got him on camera one day at this one spot. 1.5 miles away, I got him the next day, and then 2 days later, back at that first camera, I got that deer again. So he kind of was in those areas. He covered that 1.5 mile area over like a 24-hour period, and then back again. If you were to hunt a stand right by that camera, and you hunted it the day after he was there, the next day he wouldn't have been there. The following day he would have. So consecutive sits would have probably produced a shot at that buck. And again, I just feel like in this area where these buck have to travel a little more, their options are less limited to where they can go or where they need to be. It's not such a bad idea to hunt consecutive, especially if you're doing it smart, hunting the wind properly, having a good idea of direction of travel, and where maybe the doe in that area call home and how they travel through the area. If you hunt smart, you could do it, consecutive sits in these areas. I think you should give it a try. If you start seeing less deer activity or less movement, then maybe cut back, shift locations. Doesn't mean don't be mobile. If you're not on hot sign, shift. If you're not seeing deer, or you're hearing about deer in a certain other area from a friend or another hunter, relocate. But don't be afraid if the sign's there and you're confident to do consecutive sits in that area. Okay, well, we just finished packing the bike up. We covered quite a bit of ground on the bike today. We're going to another spot next. We're going to use a hiking trail to get into the next spot, and it's about a 1.5 mile walk, so that's where our next stop is going to be. I want to show you real quick on a map. Now, this is an old aerial, years before OnX and even Google Maps. I used some different aerial websites that had aerial maps, and I found a black and white aerial that was taken of this mountain area in the winter. So the next spot we're going to is actually where a swampy area that has a lot of pine trees, hemlocks actually, butts up against a laurel thicket, and where those two kind of meet, it forms a V. There's a little bit of topography there too that comes from that laurel, dumps down into the swamp right at that V, and it really funnels deer down into that swamp right at that spot. I want to show you on the map where it's at here. It may be hard to see. Alright, so this right here is the thick pines, the hemlocks. You can see the transition line, sorry, camera. You can see the transition line where this laurel comes over here and butts right into this swamp, and right there above my finger, that V is created right in here. Deer following this transition line of the laurel toward the swamp where they like to bed up. This is open hardwoods here and over here. So we're going to come at it on a hiking trail that kind of takes you over to this way and then come across this laurel here. There's a kind of a deer trail that we can use to get over this way. And we'll pop right in this area here. You can see here's the transition line of the laurel. It's this darker gray. And it comes over here toward this more black or dark colored spot. This is the pines. Right here above my fingernail, this V, right here, is where I have a camera right now. And it's an area I hunted. I've killed 2 buck back there over the years. One of the issues is that someone else had found the area and started pressuring it pretty hard. But I put a camera up in this area in July, so we're going to go back there and check the camera. We'll see what's in there. If there's something worth going after, I know how to hunt this area. Usually deer hang out in this open hardwoods up through here, and they kind of come toward this transition line of laurel and they funnel toward the swamp, or they run along these couple clusters of pine trees toward the swamp. They all kind of go in right about here, and I have a couple good trees right there. Obviously, wind direction would be coming from the open hardwoods toward this laurel, and my entry actually comes in here from this direction from the laurel. So it's a pretty good setup. It's not on beds or anything. There is bedding in this swampy area here, and there's some bedding right on the very tip of this. But I'm mostly hunting just like I call it, like a rut funnel, so to speak. Both times I've killed buck was in the rut in this area. So we'll check this out. Here's a rub. Last several years, I'm sure. This is about center of the rub here. And it's right around waist height or so. Maybe a hair higher. Hasn't been hit this year yet. Some of my buddies are starting to get trail pictures of bucks that are shedding, so rubs should start showing up. You find a lot of rock in some of these places, so it's boots with ankle support are really good to have. I broke an ankle back here a few years ago. My brother had to help carry me out. We're kind of going through this laurel patch here, following this kind of rocky area where the laurel isn't growing. It's providing a break for us to walk through. And what we're coming up to is a different kind of transition line we haven't looked at yet. Almost the edge of this swamp area. And you can see this dark timber in front of us here. This is these are all hemlocks. It's different kinds of pines, I guess. And as we get up here, you can see this real thick laurel that we're kind of standing in. Pretty nasty stuff. But as we get up here to the pines, they're acidic, so they kill a lot of the understory. And you end up with is a really nice open area. It's almost like a park. I mean, compared to what we just came through. And you can see the transition from the laurel right here, along this edge here, kind of the transition line here, looking down through there. And now we're into these pines, and you can see how open it is. I mean, I could shoot an arrow 60 yards through there. Other than a few little dead underlimbs here, it's fairly open. I have found bedding in these pine areas on the edge of the laurel, kind of similar to the open hardwoods we saw earlier. But we're going to just cut through this little patch of pines here. You can see it's rocky down through there as well. And we're going to get to the, it's where these pines kind of wrap around and meet this kind of wetter area, the swampy area, and then the laurel that we kind of walk through. It's out a little further where it kind of comes into that V we talked about in that aerial. Let's keep going. We're almost there. Getting ready to transition back into the laurel from these open pines. We're about to pop into the little more open hardwoods right where that V is. I will say about 10 years ago, or maybe more, when I found this, it was a lot more open. Some of the pines in here have got a little bigger, it's got a little thicker. When I came in and put the camera up a few months ago, I noticed that. But there's still sign, trails still look good, and just standing here I can see 2 rubs going out into this V. I keep calling it. I mean, when I say V, it's basically a funnel. It's where the laurel transition, like I showed on that map, the laurel transition kind of pinches down against that swamp and forms like a pinch. And it gets to a point where they actually intersect. I didn't go to the intersection because, like I said, that swamp holds bedded deer. But I backed off maybe 50 to 80 yards, and I'm kind of in that section there. I try to favor the side of it toward the laurel because I want the wind to be out of the north blowing into the laurel, so I'm not messing up any deer that are traveling those transition lines or any of that. So let's check this out. Like I said, I killed 2 buck back here. My first buck ever when I was 15, and then I killed one a few years later when I started hunting with some of my good buddies, Mitch and Eddie. So let's check this out. We're about out of this thick stuff. And like I said, right here we got an old rub on this pine. You can see how the woods has opened up here. It's kind of nice. There's a rub right there on that pine. A rub on that pine right there. Okay, so like I said, it's kind of hard to see. But about 80 yards that way is that, remember from the aerial, that kind of dark area. It was the hemlocks, the pines down in there. Just as we looked at earlier, underneath those pines is pretty open. So you don't want to get too close to that because bedded deer could see you looking out into this. So I'm using this laurel and some of this understory here to hide my movements into here. Like I said, the swamp's that way through here. And then the open hardwoods, get this V opens up more this way to the west. And we'll just take a little walk around here quick. I'm going to walk the edge of this laurel transition right here so you can see it. And as you can see, as we start to kind of come around this bend, right here is our first trail. And what's it doing? It's paralleling that transition line right through here. And that's kind of what we're expecting to see. I don't know what's going on here. Just tore up. Might have been from a bear. Looking for grubs, it's possible. Here's a little break in the laurel, going kind of slightly to the south. And you can see an old rub on that smaller pine right there. And right here, a trail running through it. The tree that I'm thinking about is actually right here. Get up there just above those pines, about 16, 18 feet. It keeps all these trails that kind of come through this way to my north, including these good trails we kind of just walked here, going through here. It's kind of easy to see through the ferns. And we'll see what we got. And actually, if you look through here, about 20 yards or 15, 20 yards from my tree is, right there's my camera. So we'll see what we got on there. I have a little over 2,000 pictures in 2 months. So let's hope at least a few of them are a shooter buck. Alright, I opted to pull my camera out of this area. I had 2,000 pictures, a little more than 2,000. I didn't even look at them yet. But the amount of fresh sign I'm seeing in here and just past experience, I don't see any people sign that's recent. I did find some old tacks. So, I mean, there's a possibility people come in here, but I mean, I'm used to hunting in a pretty populated area, and I have dealt with a lot of pressure over the years, and if one guy comes in here 2 or 3 times a season, I'm really not sweating it. I believe you can hunt some of these spots consecutive without having to worry about blowing out a target animal. So anyway, just there's fresh sign all over the place in here. Just look at a little bit of it some more before we leave. We got a fresh trail here, or a nice trail coming through the ferns here. I mean, look at all the deer poop kind of in, it's all over the place. Like, all these ferns are kind of, you see where the deer fed through here. I don't see any acorns laying. There's some more poopies. There's some. Deer poop, more. This is one of the main travel corridors into that swamp. Going that way, you can see this trail coming right through here. Got a nice break here in these pines. There's some sporadic laurel through here. Like I said, now these pines, a lot of these pines you see through here that are in that 10 to 15 foot height, where last time I hunted this were probably closer to 6 or 8 feet. So there could be some bedding up and through here, but again, if I stay back in this corner, I shouldn't really mess it up too much. And if the time's right, some good calling or whatever may bring a buck in. Look at this rub here. It's up on this tree here. It's almost chest high to the top of it, maybe a hair higher. This looks good through here. Let's walk this a hair more and then we get out of here. More deer poop. More poop. More poop. Almost every one of these pines has some signs of being rubbed at one time or another. I want to just walk backwards here, backtrack here on this trail, and verify this trail is near that tree that I was eyeing up earlier. So, yes, right there is the tree right there, and actually right through this gap here. That's 25 yards of this trail, and the trail kind of goes out here toward this laurel, the transition line. Looks like there's a little kind of oxbow in the transition line right here. It kicks this way, and then it's coming off the end of that, and then some are kind of still clinging to the edge and walking that other trail we were on earlier. But both trails go within 25 yards of that maple tree right there, and it's not a ton of cover. I could use a climber and get way up there, 25, 30 feet, or I could stay a little lower with a hang on and get just in where that pine ends right in there. So either would work, and like I said, just being here on north wind, make it happen. And this was about 15 yards, 20 yards behind the tree I was eyeing up. This rub was definitely hit the last couple years. It's the tree size is, you know, maybe 8 inches diameter, and this rub probably goes from about knee high to shoulder height here. It looks really good. They definitely were, some deer wasn't really happy about this. And you know, it's right here at this little break in the laurel. Right out through there is the tree that we're eyeing up to hunt this pinch point against this swamp, this rut funnel. Okay, I dropped down this, it's basically a mountain. I mean, it's a pretty big hill. Probably from the top to the bottom here is, I don't know, over 500 feet, I would think. But anyway, I want to show you guys something I talked about in the Topo video we did. This is a drainage system. It's dry right now. Usually there's some water in here. It's a spring or a small creek coming off the top of this mountain down through. And if you look, the terrain drops down and then goes back up. You can see the sides of this drainage are pretty gradual. Parts of it, like right here for instance, are a steep bank, and this steep stuff this lower section is more steep and kind of abrupt right at the creek, like right there, down here towards the bottom. So what you have happening is any deer that want to walk this ridge line come across here or vice versa, they're not going to cross where it's really steep here. What they're going to do is funnel above it. So there actually is a trail right there going across, and even beyond that you can see there's some rocks in here. It's still, like if you were to go from this side to that side, A to B, there's more distance to go down this bottom than there is if you just go along the very top. So the very top of this drainage, which is probably about 200 yards up there, it levels off so that the top of the ridge is actually flat. And at that top of that ridge above this drainage is where a lot of these deer funnel from one side of this point over here to the other side. They go like that. Like I said, there is a couple small trails that drop down through here, and deer will use them, and they'd be productive to kind of sit near. But I will say that if you drop into these bottoms to hunt, the more unpredictable your winds are going to be, and the more chance you have of the wind swirling and deer on these points picking you up. So the further you go up the hill, the more you can get consistent winds, and also thermals can be a little more predictable. And I feel like your odds are a little better up in those areas. So if I was to hunt this, I'd go close to the top. The very top especially, but even just off the top, there's a couple other small trails that cross that you could hunt. But these trails that are down here near the bottom, though they do have some tracks in them and they look pretty fresh, I wouldn't hunt low. I'd either follow them up to the top of the point if I felt that was necessary, or I'd go to the top of this drainage. The top of that drainage would be a very good spot for like a rut sit. And as you can see, the hardwoods is pretty thick up on this point. There's a lot of beech nut up through there, and there's some laurel up top. On this side, there's hemlock and laurel on top. But in this valley here, it's fairly open. If you were to get up the upper third of this hill with a firearm, you could cover those upper trails and down this drainage pretty well. And you may be able to cover darn near all of it. And that'd be a pretty high odds place to set up during a gun season. So yeah, this is a drainage, and something to look for. It helps, it funnels deer. I just came up this drainage about 15-20 yards to show you this trail here that crosses. This is the first trail going up the drainage, and it goes up this point to these hemlocks. These points are pretty good bedding locations as well. Deer can get up one of those points, the upper third, upper half of this ridge here, and watch this drainage system, and then the other side of it. You could hunt that. You could maybe use this drainage to sneak up to get past them, and if you when that deer leaves his bed, he goes that way, you catch him at the top of this drainage, one of those trails. That may be something you could pull off. So like a north wind, or maybe even a northwest wind on this point here, because I'm looking northwest, the wind coming off this way toward us. You can get bedding up there then, and then the other side here, north this way, or northeast winds coming toward us, you get bedding over there. And you might be able to, like I said, use this drainage to get to some of the trails that deer uses to enter or exit those beds. I came down here to this stream that drainage dumped into, just to show you something you can kind of expect to see a lot of places here in the Northeast. This stream is kind of running down to another bigger body of water, but this side of the stream, this north-facing hillside, look what's all over it. Rhododendrons all over this hill, and it goes up to the very top of that mountain. It's all rhododendron and laurel. And then we come to the other side of the creek, and we have fairly open hardwoods. I see maple, cherry, oak, beech. You know, you can kind of see how just the different sides of this valley can have different tree types, different habitats, and you know, encourage or discourage movement through them. Like we talked about, this rhododendron is pretty nasty to get through in spots. Open hardwoods obviously isn't. Over there would be a great place to find turkeys, you know, and more open habitat. Over this side, bare. Deer could be in either. Just a matter of finding the areas they can get through and that you can get to them. Well, I'm just about done for the day. We may check out one other little section, and that's going to be it. But while I'm in this creek bottom, one reason creek bottoms are pretty attractive for deer and possibly to hunt if conditions are right is all the soils, you know, from the surrounding areas, you kind of wash down into the low areas. So generally speaking, lower areas rich in nutrients, so the plants in those areas are often more sought after by the deer. A lot more browse in those lower areas than up top of the mountains anyway. So I just want to show a couple examples of that here in Pennsylvania, maybe the Northeast, some other areas. We got, this is right along this this creek here. We got pokeberries. They have like these, they get purple berries like this, and their stalks purple as well. Deer like eating those. And then right beside it, something that even we can eat, but deer love it, is jewelweed right here. This is jewelweed. It's actually, you can, if you get burn hazel or poison ivy, you can crack this open and put it on it, and it will help take the sting or the itch away. But the deer love to eat it. Like I said, people can eat it too. You can cut it up. The stalks can eat it. But deer, and actually looks like, you can see here, that's from browsing right there. You see how it's chewed off in the ends here? So deer have been browsing this jewelweed right here along this creek. This is later in the year, of course, so it's got some flowers on it. Earlier in the year, it looks a little more lush than this. Down in Lancaster County, where I'm from, you get big patches of jewelweed, and it's always near or beside burn hazel, which is funny because it's a cure for burn hazel or whatever. It helps take the sting away. Anyway, though, so we got jewelweed right here, and we got pokeberries right here, and that's all good browse. An example of browse that in some of these low areas. I don't really ever see this stuff on the mountaintops, but you get in some of these creek bottoms where the soil is more rich. Sunlight can get in there and get some different vegetation that deer like. I came across this creek bottom here, that jewelweed just right up there, and we got grape leaves here from wild grapes, I guess. That's something deer like to eat. I'll be chewing that. Actually, right here we got some grapes. This all, turkeys love these. Deer love them. They eat the leaves as well. So in this little section here, there's good browse. There's some more jewelweed here. And actually, if you look through here in this little swampy area down there, it is full of jewelweed. So in these low areas, it's often a smorgasbord for the deer in the area. It's something to keep in mind. Hunting, it may not be best in the valleys where that stuff's at because of the swirling winds and whatever, but you can possibly cover trails going into it and hunt it effectively. Alright, so I just finished up scouting. It actually started raining, so I kind of put the camera away and got changed in the clothes I'm going to wear home. It's almost 6 o'clock, so I spent a bunch of time today up here in the mountains, and I pinned quite a few spots, found quite a few things. I just hope this video helps you guys. If you're thinking about hunting the big woods of some of the states in the Northeast, Pennsylvania, where I'm from, New York, Virginia, those kinds of places, you'll find kind of similar things. And I'm a firm believer that in the Northeast here, some of the best deer live in these big woods, and most of it's public, so it's open to all of us to go out there and get after them. Just got to take the time to do it. I mean, lower deer densities sometimes mean uneventful sits, sometimes for days, but if you have the chance at a truly big buck, it can be worth it. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, In the Presence Outdoors. Check out some of our podcasts. We have some good content out there. A lot of this today we covered kind of a broad overview. So if there's something you want to see more of, or that we didn't get into that you're curious about, drop us a message or whatever, and we'll see what we can do. Have a good day.